Okay, so I'm back with a couple of bonus lessons to close out this monthly series. These don't necessarily fall into the specific breakdown of the planning process that we've just gone through over the last few weeks, but they do speak to what you need to do to plan out your grant writing and to write successfully. And so today I want to talk about the phases of grant writing. And this is something that I teach in my courses to my students, and I help them work their way through these different phases. So the very first phase is strategy. And the reason that we start there is because before you can create a grant writing plan, before you can actually do the writing, you need to make sure that you are headed in the right direction. And one of the big pieces of that is to make sure that you're not wasting your own time. So the strategy piece would include making sure that you're eligible for the funding opportunity that you have in front of you or that you're interested in. It's making sure that your idea is interesting to the funding agency and is likely to be funded. It's making sure that you get your work in front of the right peer review committee so that you will have an honest assessment of your work. Those are the pieces that you need to think about before you even start the planning process. Because again, if you have a grant opportunity in front of you and it has a specific deadline and it turns out that you're not even eligible for the grant, you've gone through this entire process of planning and writing and so on and so forth, and you've just wasted your own time. So we always start with strategy. Then, once you are sure that you are headed in the right direction, that's when we get into planning. And that's when you can take that massive project and break it down into smaller pieces like we've just done over the last few weeks. So first is strategy, second is planning, third is writing. And of course, that in and of itself is a huge phase of the process. It's the biggest and meatiest phase where you're actually doing the writing and making your way through the different components of the application. After the writing phase comes the feedback phase. And this is one that I cannot stress enough how important it is not to skip the feedback phase. Do not ever send in an application that hasn't been reviewed by someone. Whether you have access to internal reviews at your institution, whether you can have a friend or a colleague read it, whether you hire a grant editor. But whatever you do, make sure you have somebody look at the application before it goes in. And that, of course, will include your co-applicants, but you do want to have someone outside of the study team who's a bit removed from it to take a look at your work, because it's easy when you're in it not to notice important components that need attention. And so it's always a good idea to have someone outside of that circle who's been working very closely with the material to take a look at it from an outsider's perspective. So don't skip the feedback phase. And then the final phase is revising and submitting. And so once you have all that feedback, that's when you incorporate it into the final versions of the application and get it ready to submit. And you dot all your I's and cross all your T's and submit with a bit of confidence. So just to recap, the different phases of grant writing: first you start with strategy, then you plan, then you write, then you get feedback, and then you revise and refine. So there you have it. Come back tomorrow for one final grant writing bonus lesson.